the leadership has to match the organizational system. And that's what I'm talking about, these variables. So the variables are life cycle variables, like where we are in the life cycle, right? So if a company has been, if in the law, for example, has been around for a long time, the life cycle of that industry is old, right? Doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's mature, right? So that's a different life cycle. But if a new law firm starts, they're kind of they're early stage life cycle. So knowing those differences is important, because if you want to be a new law firm, right, you can adopt new practices and new ways of thinking about employees and how you compensate people and the system that you work in. Now you can recreate it so you can be early stage. If you want to compete at the historical way of law, then you really kind of, you're going to think and behave like, a more mature organization that has all of this legacy behavior norms, right, and stuff that's going on. How you think about your product and service. Is your product and service a commodity? Well, if you're a commodity, you don't really need a lot of creativity or collaboration. You're printing out pens, or you're making car parts, or you're making, a product being a commodity, you would think differently about that organizational culture, right? If your product or service is like high value, then you would have another kind of norms and behaviors within that, right? So if you're selling, right now, the electric cars are kind of being a big thing, right? Like electric cars have this little bit of a vibe to them, and it's like modern and it's new, right? Those people making those new products, right? Those are not commodities right now. Those are kind of new, evolving, high-tech products, right? They're not necessarily just printing out a bunch of cars the same way they've been doing for 20 years. It's got to be a different culture that's doing those things. Is the organization stable or constantly changing, right? So the Chevy truck, and I'm not an expert in these industries, right? But if best example I can give is like a newspaper business it's been around for a long time, right? You went to work, you had the reporters do the stuff had to go to print by a certain time, the machines all went out and we delivered. It's a system that was very repetitive every day, and everybody knew what they were going to do every day. Doesn't change every day. When you go to work, pretty much everybody knew what they were going to do, right? In a new kind of modern kind of like Axios or these other kind of different kind of media news outlets, right? They're behaving totally different. They don't know where they're going to go. They don't know what they're going to do every day. Every day they have people changing, the social media, how they're connecting to people, what kind of products they're doing, like what shows they're going to be on. Like things are evolving all the time, right? So how that system, what the environment's like, right? If I'm a reporter for a local newspaper, I'm going to probably do the beat every day. If I'm a reporter for Axios, I might be in, Europe right now. Or I might, be part of a show that's on Showtime. Or I might be, standing in for, it's going to be a different kind of thing. So it depends on what what kind of changes are going on at any given time that's inside that system. That's also a contingent, right? Are systems technology-based, or are the systems requiring humans to do stuff? Some companies have lots of technology that they use, and it's really important that they use it, and it kind of helps produce work. Other organizations require really smart people, or really, really talented people, or skilled people doing particular things that they have to do, right? So you can think of law firm as it really having people. You need smart people. Those are the machines that are doing the work, right? Where an accounting firm, you can probably you can use more technology to kind of maybe do that work, right? Another one is how people are motivated. Are people motivated for the paycheck, right? Again, no judgment. People work for money. Are they motivated by the paycheck, or are they motivated by the work itself? Are people in law practicing law or being a doctor or a nurse for the money, or are they doing that work because they love the work, right? That example I gave before of Next Step Bionics and Prosthetics, they love the work, right? There's no doubt about them loving the work. Having said that, that culture is going to be different than people that are only working for the money. People only work for the money. You just have to pay them more money. You have to make sure their compensation plan works. You have to make sure that they have, the resources they need to be able to produce that return on investment. But people that work for the work have different motivators, so that's important. How is the organizational designed? Is the organizational designed as a pyramid, where I have to call into a person when I'm sick, or I have to, I have one person that I talk to about challenges, or I work with every day, or is it really, or is it open, kind of like again, open system kind of thing where people can, it's more flat. It's not so, rigid as far as who communicates with people. And by the way, I'll tell you, whenever I work with somebody, I'll say, show me the org chart. Everybody's org chart looks like a pyramid. But when I ask them really who does the work, it's all over the map. So, the culture, that actual picture doesn't really tell you what it is. But how people behave and interact in that pyramid is what's important, right? And then the final variable is leadership. Is leadership authoritative, or is it transformational? Is it transactional or transformational? And in that example I gave before, you could argue that Russia is an old company with old systems that's not transparent, that is got some people that have norms and behaviors. They don't know any different, right? The norms and behaviors, it works for them and they're fine with it and it's going fine. They have a very authoritative leader. Wants to buy another company that has, that people, the transaction, the more transformational people. They're motivated because they love their country. They're motivated because they love the freedom that they have. They have this perception that their freedom is a certain thing, and their leadership is transformational. When that company tries to go buy that other company, when Russia tries to buy the Ukraine, it's like, yeah, it's not a deal. And this is real. This happens in business too. So like, if you take a healthcare organization, or any kind of organization, let's say a financial services firm, that is really transformational, right? That has like, the people are motivated by the work. They love the client work. There's a lot of good, there's a lot of good cultural norms and motivators and behaviors that are inside that culture that gets bought out. So what happens is they start seeing the big old firms coming to them, wanting to buy them. And when they do, and they look and see at that culture, well, we have all these rules. We're going to do things differently. We're going to change the rules. It's going to be totally different. You have to follow these rules now. It's very painful, which is why when we see mergers and acquisitions, right? There's really few mergers. Most of them are acquisitions, and to pretend that it's going to be this symbiotic thing is wrong. It's always going to be you're adopting someone else's culture, no matter how hard they try not to do that. The bigger the organization gets, the more old it is, the more there's going to be these old systems that are not going to be attractive to people that want to be transformational. So those are the variables. And what we can do is we can measure culture based on those variables.
So if we go back to your examples with the law firm going to Silicon Valley to look at workplaces, we can say that what's working for you now or what someone else does doesn't mean that's going to work for you. So really it's about understanding how you can change some of maybe small versions or small steps of your norms and behaviors to create that environment that you're looking for. Not everyone can be Google or Apple or other types of free environments. Not every organization can take away all the walls in the building. I worked for an organization whose corporate office everyone had an office, and then they decided to tear down everything and create these massive open spaces because that's what perceived to work. But what happened was you could no longer have a confidential conversation. If you wanted to have a personal conversation, like HR had to go into this special office where you had to reserve a time to have those type of conversations. So not every great change that has come out of Silicon Valley works for everyone. You need to understand what works best for your organization and maybe just take one small thing or one small behavior that you can change.
Yeah, exactly. You have it right. And the thing is that, so there is a show on HBO that is called Silicon Valley. And if you haven't seen it, it's hysterical. It makes fun of the Silicon Valley kind of culture. And it's definitely humor and comedy, but there are a lot of realities in that. There's a lot of real things going on in that show that they're exaggerating, right? Yeah, that's not going to work for everybody. And to think it does is ridiculous. And to think that a scale company should become this transformational, thing that looks like, a Silicon Valley company is ridiculous. And it's ridiculous to think that, I can run a consulting firm with all PhDs to give them all kinds of rules and regulations. It won't work, right? I mean, that's the reality of it. And so there's got to be, it's contingent. It depends on, these variables are all have to line up right. And then when they line up right, you can figure out what to do. So example, and just a couple of little, things that are interesting. People complain, well, Walmart has a lot of turnover, so they must be a terrible company to work for, right? No, that's how it's designed. No one goes to work for Walmart forever. They go, it's a stop on the way to somewhere else, right? It's the extra money that they need because their contract didn't come through. And there's nothing wrong with that. So if they have turnover rate, I don't know what it was, but I think at one time it had to be like, it's a lot. It's like over 20%. I mean, it's a lot of turnover. You would say, well, they're a terrible company. No, they're not a terrible company. That's how that system works, right? But if you have turnover like that in a professional services firm, well, man, you're doing something wrong. There's something drastically wrong with that, right? So there's nothing wrong with a law firm being a law firm, right? And maybe they just, you look at these variables and you change the dials a little bit, which might instruct you to change some of the protocols, right? Loosen up a little bit, just not be so rigid about, well, this is the way we always done it. You have to change those things. Yes, you want to shift those things, but no immediate shift overnight. But you just need to know what those variables are. You need to understand the culture, the people. You need to understand the nature. You need to understand the behaviors, the motivators. You need to know how you control people. You need to understand the culture. You need to understand the climate. You need to understand the overall environment. When you look at all those things, it becomes obvious what you need to do.